All right, well, good morning, everybody. And welcome to our final Rector's Forum of 2023. We'll pick up again in January, but this is the last one of this calendar year. And we are blessed today to have Samman Akbarzada with us. She is a first year at UVA. But she has quite a story that has brought her to this moment. She was born and raised in Afghanistan, and obviously as a first year for most of her life. It's been a post 9/11 Afghanistan experience, and so she's going to talk about that with us, talk about what brought her here, some of her experiences here in the United States. And we'll get to hear, this is a real treat, she's a poet and a novelist too. So we're going to get to hear some of her poetry this morning. So Samman, thank you for being with us and being part of this conversation. Let me start by just asking you about your childhood in Afghanistan. Where were you born? What was the situation like when you were a child? What did you experience? And so let's sort of talk about what happened before you came to the United States.
Thank you so much for the lovely introductions and for having me here, and thank you for all of you good people for coming here and listening. My childhood was a beautiful experience, although I was in exile with my parents because once the war happened and they had left, it took them a while to come back. We were moving back and forth to neighboring countries and then back to Afghanistan. Until 2010, I was so happy when my parents said that they're finally moving forever to Afghanistan. And I was so happy that I wouldn't have to say goodbye to my relatives. I could be in a stable place in my own country forever. So we came to Afghanistan. I went to school there. I made great friends. And I started writing when I was 6 years old. I was inspired by my mom. She was an amazing poet. She's been my greatest inspiration. And that was it.
And where did you live in Afghanistan?
In Kabul.
In Kabul, okay, in the city. And what was it like when you returned in 2010? How would you describe the atmosphere in Kabul at the time?
It was, I had a picture of Afghanistan in my mind because of my mom's stories. She talked about her days in university and how she wanted to complete that, but unfortunately because of the civil war that happened in the 1990s, she had to flee the country. So that was the picture I had from Afghanistan, a beautiful past, and then the merciless war, which led people to leave. But then now it was hopeful again. The roads were built, people were happy, women could work, go to school, and I was there in my own country, not being referred to as a refugee or alien anymore, but someone who can stay and make her mother's dream come true by going to school and university there and continuing her education.
So you felt pretty positive about things, it sounds like, in 2010.
Absolutely.
So what happened after that, and how did you end up here in the United States?
Yeah, that's like, I have to write books about that because so many things happened. I went to my school. It was a lovely experience. I had great friends. My plan was to become a novelist and also a psychologist. I was very passionate about writing novels that advocates for mental health. My plan in Afghanistan was to become a psychologist for the people who experienced war, like my parents, and be a trauma-focused therapist for them. I saw myself and the people my age as the new generation who just heard stories about war. War was something which was distant to us, but felt very close, but we had not experienced it personally, especially if you were in the city. In the rural areas, it might have been different. Of course, so many lives were lost. Even in the city, I can say, especially near celebrations, there were threats. Schoolgirls were unfortunately bombed, and one of them was Kaj, which 60 schoolgirls lost their lives. But still, in the next morning, we would leave our homes to go to school because how long can you wait at home? And we had this faith that yes, grown-up men with their guns might be scary, but little girls with their pens is even mightier than that. And we had faith on our education, on our pen, and that we will change the narrative of our country.
How did you get to the United States?
So as I was writing since I was 6, I had this dream of becoming published one day. And in every website that I went, the requirement was that you have to be a US citizen, or in the West, basically. Like, nobody believes in a writer writing in a foreign language, in English, in Afghanistan. It's very difficult to publish them because even Amazon doesn't function there. So I was at the other side of the world and receiving robotic rejection letters, 500 rejection letters, until 19th May 2021. It was a mail that said congratulations. And that novel is called Life is a Movie. It's about a widow woman who loses her husband, who is a soldier. She now has to find ends meet with her son. So I was so happy that finally I could imagine myself holding my book and becoming a published author in my own country, explaining the wars of the past to the world. Moving fast forward in August, which was its publication date, it did not feel like a book launch but a funeral, because I was seeing this collapse of Afghanistan, the Taliban coming like a train and leaving us like a train wreck. I cancelled my book launch, I cancelled my interviews, I went to different sources that had published about me, I told them to please delete it. I was going everywhere and eliminating my existence, basically, and that dream that I had, unfortunately, after that it was like I need to survive, not become a published author.
It kind of puts the target on your back for the Taliban, right?
Exactly. So in the book, because I have narrated the past and the struggles that the women faced at that time and the consequences that it led to, and the trauma of war. Of course, I had criticized the dictatorship regime. I put myself, unfortunately, in a threatful situation, and I had to evacuate immediately. I did not have time to think where to go, and the airports were not functioning. The only place I could leave to was Rwanda. The first time I heard its name, I thought it was Uganda. So the lady, Alison Renew, who helped me, she was like, no, it's Rwanda. And she sent it to me in a text, and I Googled where Rwanda is that I'm going. She said, you have it was midnight. So she said, you have 8 hours to think about it. And even when I was in Afghanistan, I was sending emails to everyone to get out as soon as possible. And this lady who got back to me said, actually, I received 5,000 emails from people who are asking for help. But I didn't know who I can help because I could only help one more person. So I closed my eyes and I went through my emails. And I put my finger, and that was your email. And she came and met me in Rwanda when I was there. So it was midnight, I had 8 hours to think about whether I would leave or not. I didn't have much of a choice. So I left. And I was on tourist visa for 8 months in Rwanda. And here I am.
So what did you do in Rwanda, and how did you get from Rwanda to the United States?
Yes, in Rwanda I had the most beautiful memories and saddest memories of my life in that country. It will be an unforgettable place for me, and I can see myself going back there one day to just visit for the memories. What did I do? A lot of waiting. It's a country where the seasons do not change, and you're sitting beside the window looking out in hopes to be looked at by something other than that darkness that you are seeing. You are in a delusional state that, okay, I can physically see myself here, but where am I? And unfortunately, my experience was quite sad because just when we moved to Rwanda, my mom, may God bless her soul and may she rest in peace, was diagnosed with cancer. So I was dealing with the loss of my country and also going through a very traumatic experience, watching a loved one be in pain. And the thing is that when you are a refugee on a tourist visa and from a country that has collapsed, it's not easy to obtain a visa. And Rwanda didn't have the treatment for cancer. And we were applying to any country that would give us a visa, especially Kenya, which was the closest. But again, Afghanistan is listed as a third world country, which means the time you obtain the visa is unknown.
So you were applying to various countries to try to get a visa to get medical care for your mom especially. And I assume that one of the countries you applied to was the United States, right? And that's how you got a visa ultimately to come here? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Coming to the United States was a great miracle, and we have been helped by great people. Especially I want to mention Mr. Daniel Club and his entire family. He was very instrumental in getting us here. He works at Rwanda in the embassy. So I met him, and he basically took care of everything and was able to get us here. And of course, because of the medical urgency, the case was expedited. But a typical case for people, like, you never know when you will leave, and you getting to the final destination is never promised. You have to wait for a lot of time. But in my case, it was different, so that's why I was able to come in a relatively shorter amount of time.
And what kind of visa do you have now? Obviously, you're a student. What happens once you graduate?
So I am a refugee.
Okay, you have a refugee
Yes.
status. Okay.
I'm a refugee.
Okay, all right. So you came to the United States, you and your mom, right? Anyone else in your family?
Siblings.
And your siblings as well, okay. But your dad was still in Afghanistan, is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
And when was he able to get over here?
My dad was back home because he didn't have passport and the ministry was shut down. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Internal Affairs. So he didn't have the chance to leave, and he said to me, like, you have to go, you cannot stay. So I could leave with my mom and my siblings, and I'm in this new country. It's been 3 months that I'm here, and 3 or 4 months, and my mom passed away in November of 2022. So I was the caretaker of my 2 younger siblings in a place that I barely know anyone, going from one courthouse to the other to get the legal guardianship and convince the judge. So it was a difficult situation. Of course, I needed my dad, I missed him. But thankfully, by the grace of God, he reunited with us and he's in here. He came about 3 months ago.
So in your short life so far, you have seen a lot. Lived in multiple countries before you were able even to return to Afghanistan. You saw the collapse of the government in Kabul and the emergence of the Taliban. You fled to Rwanda. You lived there for 8 months, unsure of what your future would be. You were able to secure refugee status and come to the United States. You had to watch after your siblings while your mother was sick. And now you are a student at the University of Virginia here. It's an incredible journey. Probably no way you could have imagined this is where you would be in your late teens, early 20s. As you look back on all of this, how do you process it? How do you make sense of it? How do you give meaning to these years that you have experienced?
That is such a profound question. How do we bring meaning to our suffering? And I believe it is a tug of war. Sometimes, of course, when your hope and faith is high, you can believe in the things that are happening, but at one point it's like, what now? Like, how am I even going to convince myself to have hope anymore? Because it's bad news after bad news after bad news. However, for me personally, I have always prayed to God to not let my faith go away. And I can say that my faith has made all the difference. I have always reminded myself of the stories that are mentioned in the sacred book to remember that I am not the only one who has gone through this, and there are great people who have gone, especially the story of Hazrat Yaqub, who is mentioned as Jacob in the Bible. There is a beautiful verse in the Quran where he says, I only complain of my deep grief and sorrow to God, and I know of God what you do not know. And that is so profound because each one of us have a unique relationship with God, and we know something about Him that others might not know, and He knows something about us that others don't know. So that makes it such a strong connection. So even if you are tired and cannot articulate your trauma in a single phrase or sentence, it is assuring to know that there is a God who knows you, and if He knows you, He has a plan for you. So I held on to faith, and there's a huge frame hanging in my room that a dear friend wrote down this verse and gifted to me, where it says, He knows what is in every heart. It's a verse in Surah Baqarah. Again, like there's so much assurance that even if you feel like you're sleepwalking through life and you don't know how to explain to people why you are the way you are, or what has happened to you, but there is a God that knows what's inside your heart, and that makes all the difference to continue to carry on, and that there is definitely a happy ending that Jacob and Joseph do meet.
Yeah. I imagine in a sense too that you must have been kind of on alert or almost in what they call the fight or flight mode for much of your life because of just the danger and trauma that was around you. You're in a much more stable environment now. How does that feel to adjust to that psychologically, emotionally? I imagine that must feel shocking and jarring, but what's that experience been like for you?
I can't say that I'm not 100%. I don't really feel that I'm settled.
No, okay.
No, sometimes I'm constantly looking, do I have enough bags to carry my entire life again? But because I was given 5 hours to carry with me whatever I could in a backpack. Yeah. In a backpack and a broken heart, that's what I could take with me from my country. So I think it stays with you. The night I left my room, I was looking at the books that I loved so much and I couldn't finish reading. I couldn't take an entire bookshelf with me out of there. So will I get to reunite with them? My friends that I left, my dad, I left him behind at that time. So now in here, I believe experiencing all of that makes me relate to all those people because I was not the only one. And now that I'm here, that's why I want to give that stability, feeling of safeness and assurance to the Afghan refugee community here, and that's the reason that I want to study psychology at UVA, to become a trauma-focused therapist, to heal and at the same time simultaneously help myself heal.
So if I heard you right, it sounds like there's still feelings of sort of vulnerability and insecurity.
Yes, and yeah, I don't think you can 100% forget all of that.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't have to forget all of that. Maybe there is a reason, so you can write poems about it.
Nice, yeah. Let's talk about your poetry. Is there a poem that you want to share with us that you think particularly captures maybe your experience of being here in the United States? Is there a poem along those lines that would be great for us to hear?
Yes, I just thought of one. I would like to share.
Great.
So this is my book, A Glimmer in the Dark, and I would love to share a poem with you. funny how I opened it and it was exactly that one I wanted to read. I am not at home anymore, but now in a very strange state. I see the uncle selling fresh vegetables from delusional windows. I hear the little girls saying hi to me on their way to the school that is shut down. I feel my best friend's hug, but I don't even know if she is alive. I can see myself here, but where am I? I am the living country covered with a shroud that is now my flag. I am the widowed mothers, starving children, and desperate dads. I am a million girls fading in the corners of murky rooms. I am the soldier left with broken badges and unhealed wounds. I know who I am, but who am I? I am screams heard by heartless men, an irrelevant tragedy for feminist women. I am the only kind of myself lost to calamity, a witness at the death of dear humanity. I know I am a human, but what am I?
So you're on a quest to discern who you are, your identity.
Thanks.
As you think about living here in the United States, and it hasn't been a long time, right? It's just been maybe over a year, basically. What have been some of the biggest cultural shocks for you? What are the things that have been easy to adjust to, and then what are the things that have been hard to adjust to, and just you found it disorienting to the extreme, we'll say?
I always make jokes and call America the land of forms. So the amount of forms I have to fill after a doctor's appointment, or the overflowing forms in my
paperwork.
Exactly. That is true. That was very shocking. But in the realistic sense, I would say the hustle culture. Once you're here, you have to work, move forward very quickly. Like life does not stop for you. And I think that's because as experience as a refugee, and also I come from a place that is very collectivist. And Afghanistan, it's big families, relatives together. There is a gathering at least once a week. Although I personally was not someone who loved that much partying, being a deeply introverted person, but I can't imagine how difficult it is for the Afghan refugee communities who are here and are very isolated, and on top of that, not knowing the language. You feel like an alien, basically, being in a place where you don't know anyone, don't know the language, and are asked to fill 100 forms. I work as an interpreter for the international rescue community, and there's this wonderful community gathering called CV Tulips, where I do interpretation as well. And so I am among these refugees, and I can see that the greatest struggle is the amount of work they have to do to find ends meet and their basic survival needs. And also how that occupies you and does not allow you to check on loved ones. But you can't even do that because you're scattered around the world like, petals of a flower. So the biggest cultural shock might be the question that will we reunite again?
So it sounds like you've experienced here more individualism, maybe than what is the cultural norm in Afghanistan, that things are sort of fast-paced, right? And that feels especially overwhelming when you're not secure in your situation, when you don't know the language, right? And maybe things are even a little bit more bureaucratic here, it sounds like, from what you're saying. What are some of the things, though, that have been cultural reliefs for you, just have brought you a peace of mind coming here to the United States?
I definitely would like to say freedom of speech, that I am not afraid of writing whatever I want in my books. I really cherish that.
You can come to a public space like this and say pretty much whatever you want.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think it'd be a good time to open it up to questions from the group. I'm sure people have questions for Samman. Yes, Sarah.
Why did you learn English so long?
Good question, yeah.
The credit goes to Hannah Montana. I grew up watching Disney Channel, so I loved all the shows. And then as a teen, I fell in love with English literature. And of course, for writing, I had to read a lot and self-studying mostly.
Any other questions for Samman? Yes, over there.
Good months. Wow. It's just, you turn the water in full blast and you got to get as much as you possibly can. What do you need to accomplish now for your family? It's an ongoing process, it's a moving target. But what are you focusing on besides school?
Thank you for that question. Right now, my greatest hope and something I'm so grateful for is that UVA letter that I received, the acceptance letter. And I'm trying to make the most of that because we girls from Afghanistan especially, we love education because it was never given to us easily. We have always fought for this. So now that I can see myself having the opportunity in here, while it's been over 800 days that teenage girls are banned from going to school in Afghanistan, and it's the only country. So for me, it's like making the most of this opportunity, becoming a psychologist, becoming an advocate for them, and help as much as I can my people in here and back home. That gives me the motivation and completely makes me forget everything that has happened and to just keep the focus and move forward.
What has been your experience of your classmates and professors? How has that interaction been so far? You're just in one semester, right? So this is the very beginning, but what's that been like?
Yeah, I had my final exam yesterday, so I'm happy it's over. That's a good question. Sometimes I do feel like a grandmother being between the young people because of first so many experiences that I've had. It changes the perspective you have about the world. It changes your values, your vulnerabilities. But I would say it's lovely. I have got to meet amazing people. I have made good friends, my professors. I really admire the passion the professors have and what they're teaching. So I was searched in YouTube watching professors giving lectures on psychology. So sometimes it's like, oh, now I'm in the class watching the professor giving lectures on psychology. Particularly, I love my poetry class, and it's been such a beautiful experience. So I'm enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to the spring semester.
Other questions we have? Yes, Paul.
Samman, can you tell us a little bit about how you continue to tutor women and girls in Afghanistan?
Oh, yes.
Yes, thank you for that question. So there is a nonprofit organization called HCFF. I've been tutoring online the girls back home on the weekends. I find the time. And yesterday was the end of the semester. So I've been teaching from February of 2022. And we've had graduates. It's this amazing organization that is giving so much hope to the girls back home at these classes. And I'm so lucky to have this opportunity to get to teach them. And I listen to those girls. I wish the world could hear them, and the way, even in their darkest moments, like imagine you were on your last semester to get your master's and suddenly they tell you you're not able to go to work. You are someone who, your entire family depends on you, but now they're telling you you cannot go to work. And they tell each other and give hope to each other, and they inspire me so much. I've been so blessed to get to hear their stories. The other day, a girl said that, I am a speaking class teacher, so I ask them questions, and the question was, what is the feeling you miss? So I get to motivate them to speak, and unfortunately that turned out pretty sad because everyone said, I miss how I used to wear my backpack and go to school. I miss seeing and eating lunch with my friends at university. I miss the feeling of going early in the morning to work. I miss that. I miss going to public places like park and restaurants. I miss showing my face in the media. And I went quiet and, choking onto words to how to give them hope at this point, until a girl raised her hand and she said, they might have closed our schools, they might have closed everything, but they cannot close our minds. We can read ourselves, we can write, and we will continue until this ends, because only through education, only when we don't allow this darkness to change us, can we change this.
What other questions do we have? Yes.
I'm curious about refugees. Are they continuing to come out of Afghanistan, and are they coming to the United States or other countries, and how are they being?
Yes, so since 2021, the amount has decreased. It has become more challenging. Unfortunately, just recently, 1.7 million refugees were deported back to Afghanistan from Pakistan. So the neighboring countries, so the thing is that you cannot obtain visa and passport, so you're now going to be in a country stuck and stateless. And when they decide to deport you back home, it's like another tragedy. So it's a very difficult situation right now, and coming to the United States is not easy. Mostly the focus are SIVs, and it takes years of process, and they have to be in a third country. But unfortunately, if the third country deports you back home, it's impossible to get here.
Can you define what an SIV is for us?
SIV is Special Immigration Visa, which
Okay.
yes, which is for people who worked for the United States in Afghanistan, and also I think Iraq has the same visa as well.
Now, my understanding is there is a sizable Afghan community here in Charlottesville. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I mentioned earlier about CV Tulips.
Yeah.
So it's a program where the Afghan community are gathered together. Transportation is provided to them. There is volunteers through medicine and UVA medicine house, where they take care of the children, and the women get to have a break from all those children and have time for themselves and color and talk. So that feels like going back home for a little bit. This happens once every 2 weeks. So I get to be with the Afghan community there, and yeah, they're all, I listen to their stories sometimes in the bus when they're talking to each other. Mostly it's a family member, a loved one is left behind. So one is asking from the other, okay, how are they doing? And then she just mentions, oh, well, the situation has gotten worse, he's unemployed. And then the other one asks her, okay, so how is your son or child doing back home? That's mostly what is their conversation, but I also get to see their beautiful smiles and their hope that they're here trying to start life from square one, from scratch. And these are the women who are experiencing war for the second time. These are the women who left their homes with nothing for the second time. And I think they are the bravest, most strongest women, and all they want is some kindness and some peace.
And I was saying to you before we started this conversation that my wife is an ESL teacher at Journey Middle School, and a good number of her students are refugees from Afghanistan. So I think it's a pretty sizable community here. Yeah. What other questions do we have? Yes, Richard.
I just wanted to say, personally, I feel that someone like you is a blessing that you're here in Charlottesville, part of our community for however long you are here. And I, know the news and read and see things. I cannot imagine the things that you experience. So I'm grateful that you're here. You really most took here to speak to us this morning.
Thank you so much. It means a lot, and I'm so happy to be here in this Charlottesville. Honestly, when people ask me how is Charlottesville, I'm like, it's the best place I could ask for because of you beautiful people. Such a welcoming community.
Elizabeth, yeah.
Yeah, well, Sam, thank you so much for sharing yourself the way you have. You have said repeatedly in the course of things back at home, or when they go home, or the limit back home, and you said, when this ends, what is your expectation? You grew up in Kabul. You are actually an urban Afghan. My understanding is that the Taliban's strength is more rural. I could be entirely wrong about that. But what I am hearing, you have retained hope, and your hope has to do with home and as an American who has watched the agonies of Afghanistan from the 80s on, your hope lights a candle for me. What do you have to say about that? Because clearly that is your personal hope, that it will end in your lifetime. I guess I'm asking, is there a basis for that hope?
Why are you so hopeful about Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Thank you for that very honest feelings and question. I believe faith plays a huge part in this hope, because if not hope, then what? What do we have except for hope? And this hope is that makes me do good things. This hope is why I teach them online. If I did not have hope, I would just sit here in misery, and that would do good to nobody. It's because of this hope that I do good and I feel good, and it makes me continue. I will have hope forever, even if I'm not the one to witness it. At least I can close my eyes in peace that there are a few girls back home who I know who will continue this journey. It's a journey, it's not the end, because if we read in the sacred books, in the Quran, in the Bible, no tyranny has lasted forever. And over again, we learn this lesson, that it ends at one point. So the darkness, it cannot last. There is a part in my book and a real experience that I had when I was leaving Afghanistan forever. I was in this little van, and it was 4 in the morning. It was just starting to light up. And it felt like my country is burning, but I noticed that the sky was blue, and there is a way for the light to come in. So if there's a way for the light to come in, there is always a way for the darkness to end. We just have to wait. And sometimes it's 24 hours, sometimes it's 24 months, but eventually it will end. And I have full faith in that, and I have faith in education and in all these girls and young people back home, and I know that this will end.
So it's your hope that has given your life purpose.
Absolutely.
And what I heard you say too was that a life without hope is a life without direction and purpose. It just leads to kind of nihilism and despair. Your comments about light too kept reminding me of this line that we're going to hear in just a couple weeks, which is that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it, talking about the life of Jesus. And certainly a message in the Quran as well, that God is ultimately in control, and the forces of brokenness and darkness in our world cannot win again. Yeah. What other questions do we have for Samman? Yes, back.
Is there anything within our community here, or UVA, or Carlos more broadly, that we can do to help our especially communities?
How can we help you?
Thank you so much. So CB Tulips, they are always looking for volunteers. IRC, International Rescue Community, always looking for volunteers. You can help through them. And just, being a little more kind. Of course, I know that all of you amazing people are, but just this reminder of the importance of empathy, that why it's important to be kind to our neighbor who is speaking a different tongue, and that reminding ourselves that we are more similar than we are different.
Any final questions for Samman today? All right, well, let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. Sharing your story, and I'm sure you're going to stay around for a little bit and talk to people. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you.